Hi guys, welcome to this week's how-to video. Today I'm just going to be going over some basics of how to clean an airbrush. This isn't very complicated, and frankly most people will pretty much have it down already. But it might be useful for some people, and to be honest, that's 90% of why I do my videos, because they might be useful to somebody. Another one where I'm expecting a low watch count, but hopefully someone will find it interesting. Now, things that are useful for cleaning airbrushes: some airbrush cleaner, some water, some cotton buds, some toilet paper, a few airbrush cleaning tools. The most useful are these actual pipe cleaners, and this thing here, which I'll just show you, is a tiny pointy stabby thing which you can use to clean up lumps and stuff in your airbrush nozzles. Be very gentle and very careful with those things. They are sharp as buggery. And some gloves. I'm just going to put some gloves on. Alright, I've got two airbrushes that I'm going to clean today, and it's primarily just to show that the principle for cleaning airbrushes is fundamentally the same for pretty much for most airbrushes. I've also got set up, which I'm going to quickly show you, my compressor. It's not on at the moment, but I will be turning it on later, because once you've finished you want to blast some water or something through the airbrushes to make sure they're clean. Right. This is my Harder Steenbeck Ultra. It's a middle of the range airbrush, say back about £80 to £90 at most. You can usually get them a little cheaper if you hunt. Really good, very solid, nice workhorse of an airbrush. And this is the airbrush that came for free with my compressor. Ironically, a really nice airbrush. Very cheap, not particularly well made. I'm just going to take this apart. Just to show you some damage on. This bit actually came out, and I've had to insert it back in and use some glue to hold it in place, but the whole thing still works. So it's actually quite a solid little workhorse, and it has a very good wide spray angle, meaning for painting scenery it's actually really quite useful. I must admit, whilst I use this thing for most of my detail work and a lot of my model painting, I probably use this thing more because it takes a lot more to paint scenery, and it's really good for batch painting base coats on miniatures. Right, this here is the cup. The paint goes in here, the gravity pushes it down, and the suction forces it through. Now, airbrushes tend to disassemble in much the same way. So I'm just going to take this one apart. Doopy-doopy-doo. Oh, come on. There we go. Oops, sorry. Sorry, I've taken it apart in the wrong way. Right, first you get this bit. Then you unscrew this slightly. This comes out. This is your needle. You can unscrew that bit, but usually you don't need to when cleaning an airbrush. Then you get these bits. Here is your little nib or your nozzle. These bits are mostly designed to protect the nozzle. However, they can get blockages as well. They are worth cleaning. If they're really dirty, really encrusted, it can be worth getting a little cup like this, putting some airbrush cleaner in, and just soaking them for a little while, and then rinsing them thoroughly with water afterwards. Now, first thing you tend to want to do, and it's worth noting both these cups are full of water. I'm not as yet going to fill them full of anything else. Get your tissue. You notice I'm wearing gloves. There's two reasons for that. One, The airbrush cleaner is quite alcoholic, and if you've got any cuts in your hand, it will sting, and I probably do. 2, if you've got any dirt or paint on it, it will transfer to the needle. Now this bit, you have to be really careful with. This is probably the most delicate piece of the airbrush, and it's also the bit you're most likely to break or damage. Let's get my finger there. So this is the bit you've got to be careful. You can see I've abused this airbrush a bit, and I should have cleaned it when I finished with it, but I haven't. And a big part of that was because I was planning to do this. If you're using an airbrush, I totally recommend clean it when you finish with it. It'll be a lot easier, it'll be a lot quicker, and you'll have a lot less trouble. Now, there you can see I've just wiped any excess paint off of that. There is no more paint on that. Oh, there might be a tad. I'm just going to take a little bit of water now and just clean the rest off. The airbrush cleaner is an alcoholic, alcohol, ethanol thing. Don't drink it, it's not that kind of alcohol. I tend to use Vallejo because they're easy to get, they're cheap, they come off the internet, and a lot of local stores do them. Now this bit shouldn't ever get dirty. If it does, and things can happen, you get backwash, you get blockages, and end up with paint coming out of all kinds of areas of the airbrush. If it does, a little bit of water just in there will do that. Now I'm just going to, you can see I've got some paint leakage here. I'm just going to clean that off. Usually you'll be okay with just a little bit of water. You can see I'm using these cotton buds. Part of the reason for that is that they're awfully convenient. And they can get into gaps and that. Another part of the reason for that is that they're disposable. You can see I've gotten some paint out of there. Now you want to be careful when doing this. Always check in any hole you put it, because little bits of fluff can come off of these, and you don't want that gumming up your airbrush either. Now, sorry, this, let's get my hand, come on, focus on my hand. There we go. This bit here is the nib of your airbrush. It's the most delicate bit. You want to be really careful when taking this bit off. This one actually, I actually have a spanner to take it off. I'm going to take my glove off because I literally cannot handle this thing delicately enough with my hand. You want to be very, very careful. Now, there's a little blockage in there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thing and very, 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 very delicately just put it in the end there. And you can see, again, just use my hand to make sure that to get the camera to focus, that it will just come out the end there. Now you can see this thing is flat. The reason is so you can just turn it and it will scrape the inside ever so gently, just taking out the paint. You do not want, and you should not get it so that you jam it straight in. You will break that and you will have nothing you can use to paint with. Now, very, very gently going to put this back in. Oop. Okay. Do your work. That's another thing I can't stress enough. Do your work on a table. Get a mat like this where you can see what you're doing, because these bits are tiny. Okay, and you just want to tighten that up. There's a little bit of rubber that seals it, and it only needs to be just finger pinch tight. You don't need to tighten it too much. Again, it's one of the most delicate bits of the airbrush. Now, another place that paint can get is along the shaft of the airbrush here. This one's fairly easy. I'll just show you that. This bit slots in here, and what happens is the trigger will push a bit inside. I don't know if you can see that, back and forth, and this bit goes back and forth, and this bit, as you remember earlier, was holding on to the needle. Now I'm going to quickly put the little awl away. Sometimes I'll stab myself in the fingers with it, and I don't want to stab myself in the fingers with it. Now, you notice I'm not going to stick a cotton bud down this, and that's because I don't want it to get dirty. I'm just going to put this in some water, because it's not actually dirty enough to need anything else, and I'm going to use this cotton cleaner just to clean around the back here ever so gently. And you don't want to be jamming this in. That's not what you want to do. You might find some paint's leaked around here. It's mostly cosmetic, but it's worth cleaning it off, because you can get, around this bit here, it's worth cleaning it off, because you can get it to the point where it jumps back into the airbrush, bits of paint, lumps of paint can get into like a grit-like substance, at which point you have two things that can happen. One, they'll block the tiny nozzle here, so it just stops working. Two, and I've only had this happen once, they'll shoot out the nozzle, bounce back off the inside of one of these bits, and break the nozzle. I've had that happen to me once. I was using the airbrush and the nozzle got crushed from the front. You can only assume there was a bit of paint in it. It wasn't this airbrush, it was another cheap as chips airbrush. But again, that's why I tend to do things. Now I'm just going to use this and a bit of cleaner just to clean around here. And do the same in here. Now I'm using this to do a bit of cleaning. I'm primarily using it to apply the cleaner, and then I'm going to take the larger brush like this, just cleaner, and just make sure that any fluff that might have been left by something like that is removed. And again, you can see that it had some paint on, now it doesn't. Now I'm going to put this back on here. Now there's a reason I'm putting it back on here when I'm done with it, is to protect the nozzle. Ideally what you want to actually do is protect the nozzle first. I probably should have done it the other way around, but you know, you live and learn, or in my case, you live and forget things. And I'm going to use a bit of water and a bit of that. Sometimes people keep a brush that's 50-50. I'm running low, so that's just why I'm doing it this way. And again, you just clean in here, get any air, get any paint out of there. And then I'm just going to use a pair of tweezers and just very gently just rinse that off. And I'll just screw that back on. I'm going to take the needle, and again I'm going to use the words very gently a lot in this video, and you should be able to feel when it goes through easily. That's nice and loose, so if you're a bit worried about that being loose, you can take the whole thing off and just insert it in the end there. But it doesn't really matter. And you just put that through until you feel contact. Don't push it, don't force it, don't jam it. I'm going to quickly disassemble this bit. The reason I put this on was in case I dropped or anything stupid like that. But I'm going to quickly disassemble this bit, and yeah. You can, again, you can see, you should be able to see if it gives me focus. Come on, give me focus. There you go. You can see that the needles come out the end there. You can have it not come out the end. It will give you a wider spray, or you can have it come out the end. It wants to come out the end slightly. At least that's what I was shown. If I'm doing this wrong, please let me know, because I was shown how to do this, and I believe the person that showed me, and it's worked for the past couple of years. so I'm fairly okay with it. You might wonder what this bit's for. I'll quickly show you that in a minute. Actually, I'll quickly show. I'm unscrewing again. I'll quickly show you now. When you pull this trigger, you can see the needle goes back and forth. And again, if I just take this off very carefully, very quickly, you can see that the needle gets pulled back and comes back out of the tip there. Little nozzle there. Very carefully. As I'm saying be very careful because the needle tends to be the most expensive part. Of an airbrush, and particularly with these cheaper models, you can often find that it's more expensive to replace parts of them than it was to get them in the first place. I mean, this one was free, so obviously, but even if I were to buy something like this, it probably wouldn't cost me more than £12, probably 20 at most, depending on where I got it. So it's kind of important not to break it, not because of the cost, obviously, but rather because of the fact that it's not worth the money replacing. It's not worth money fixing. And again, I've got some paint here, so again, I'm just gonna get some airbrush thinner there and just run that around the outside. I do get a bit of leakage on this airbrush and backwash. It's not a very expensive airbrush, so I'm not particularly fussed. I'm just gonna. If you're wondering, these airbrush cleaning kits with the brushes and everything are available off the Magic of the Interweb or any reputable airbrush sales thing. A lot of airbrushes do come with them, do come free with them. They're relatively cheap. I believe these ones cost me a grand total of £3. Just run some water through that. Just rinse that through with some water. Okay. Now I'm going to turn on my airbrush compressor. You'll hear that noise in a minute. And that's going to build up pressure remarkably quickly. There you go. And then you should be able to see there's some water residue in there, which is what's coming out. These are useful little things. This is a spray pot. The idea is you put your airbrush nozzle in there and spray and paint, and just more importantly, this stuff doesn't come out in atomized bits everywhere. Now I'm going to put some of this into the cup, as you can see, just like that. Not a lot. And then I'm just going to take a bit of water and do the same thing. I tend to do it about 50-50. Sometimes I'll run the pure stuff through it if it's particularly blocking, but this the cleaner is quite expensive, so I don't tend to use a lot of it. And then you just run it through there, and you can see that it's spraying and filling up. You can see that it's if I just bring the cup over, if I do that, you can see that it's emptying out the cup at a reasonable rate. And that's how you can tell your airbrush is flowing. If stuff's coming out the front, and if the cup, and if the cup or the jar or whatever you use to fill it to store your paint is being emptied at a reasonable rate. You can see this one actually goes like stink. If you're not sure if your airbrush is spraying, an easy thing to do is get some tissue paper, and you can see that it's wetting that tissue paper. There's not much left. There's none left in it. That was literally what was left. But yeah, you get some tissue paper. You see the tissue paper is wet. Ergo, the airbrush is spraying. And that's really the basics of how to clean the airbrush. I was a bit quick and easy with that one. I might be a little more delicate with my harder Steenbeck because that thing actually cost me money and I bought that on purpose. First things first, I'm going to clean up the cleaning area. It may sound obvious or it may sound silly, but clean your cleaning area. Get the junk out of it, get rid of bits and pieces. Having a messy cleaning area is exactly how you lose the small bits of the airbrush, and like I say, they're expensive to replace. They can be 20, they can be 30, they can even be more depending on how expensive your airbrush was to begin with. I know people who've got airbrushes that cost them £500. My friend Joel, for example, who's a professional painter of such amazing quality. Now, as I'm taking this one, if you see, this one's come out in one single bit. And I'm just going to show you the difference in the nib. That one had a small nib that unscrewed. This one has a large nib that slots in. It's one of the reasons I went for a harder Steenbeck is because, and I dropped it, is because some of their parts are just tank-like. They're just really solid. They're much harder to break than some of their competitors. There are amazing airbrushes out there though. The Iwata and bits like this. Bits like that. Now, with this airbrush, because it's got more bits, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it a bit at a time. And I recommend doing this. You can disassemble the whole airbrush if you want. Sometimes you'll have to. But first things first, I'm just going to get some water, and I'm just going to use the small one, just insert it in there, and again, the word gel ever so delicately, you just put it in there, and they're spiraled, so you don't have to shove them in there. You can just twist it gently like that, and use that rely on the spiral motion. I'm just going to get my oil and very gently, never this way, never this way. You'll widen the tip and damage it. But yet again, very gently, not even gravity pressure, to be honest. Just put that in there, turn that slightly. You can focus your stupid camera. And just turn that slightly. Okay, that's clean. Yeah, I'm just gonna this goes quite wide, so you can use it for other bits. This bit's a bit more robust, so you can just make sure there's nothing in there. Really, really blooming gently. I'm probably doing this all wrong. This is just how I've cleaned my airbrushes. I've had people who supposedly know what they're doing show me. And again, in this point, I'm going to use a wider one. Just put some water on it, and just again clean there. And that looks clean. If I want to clean these things, that these bits are quite useful. I can just let's change to a small one. I can just insert bits in there, and that can clean the front of there if I get splashback on there, and you know, occasionally I do. And same thing with this. And it is worth cleaning these bits simply because paint dries off, and then suction and gravity will take a bit of flecks of paint and drive them in places you don't want them. Again, you can see I've got a bit of paint there. I'm just going to try and take that off. It's unlikely that bit of paint will go anywhere, but ideally you want to be operating your airbrush with surgical cleanness. I know those terms to a lot of us are a bit counterintuitive. Surgical cleanness, some of us are messy buggers. I am particularly. Bring that to focus, and again you can see that that's nice and clean. I'm not going to fully assemble it because there is a trick with this one to clean it the whole way through. This bit can be disassembled. I've never found dirt or paint going down there, so I'm not going to. Right. Again here, you can see it's exactly the same kind of deal with the other one, and instead of a big trigger, you've got this very gentle dual action. Now with these ones, in case you're not familiar, down determines how much air goes through, back determines how wide the aperture is that lets the air through. So you can use a combination of pressure and flow. Again, already we can see there's some dirt back here. We can see some dirt back here that's gone in there, and I'll clean that in a minute. First things first, I'm just going to unscrew this, not all the way. It doesn't need to be screwed in all the way. And just take out that needle and very carefully put that needle down. As I said, I'm going to take it apart a bit at a time, clean it a bit at a time, put it back together, probably all at once. But that's just so that I don't have 100 bits all lying around and I don't forget to clean them. And then you can use a tissue paper, you can use this bit. You can see there are rings of stainage up as far as here. Sometimes that happens. And again, you can see this needle is reasonably clean. And I'm just going to take a clean bit of tissue paper. This stuff will dry off the wash. I tend to sometimes find it leaves a bit of a sticky residue. Usually it doesn't, but every now and then I do, so I tend to wash it off. And again, you can see that's clean. It's got a few machine works in it where it presses against the inside of other bits, but that's fine. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put that on there. Now I'm going to undo this bit. This can be a tricky bit. This bit comes out. Now this one is actually fairly solid. I like the harder Steenbeck trigger mechanism because it doesn't come out. When you do this with some other airbrushes, be very careful because these bits tend to fall out, tend to go sideways, and can go wonky. This bit actually is fairly solid, fairly simple, just drops out like that. And again, we can see that's a bit dirty, so I'm going to clean it. And again, you can now, where are we? Camera. Yep, there you go. There, go. You can see all the way through the airbrush, and that's cool. Now, I'm going to clean this bit first. There's a reason I'm doing it in a very specific order. That's because it will allow me to make sure I've done all the bits, and it will allow me to make sure I can put it back in a very specific order. You don't have to do it in the very specific order I'm doing it. Other people have better memories than me. Other people don't have the problems with short-term memory that I actually have. I'm learning disabled. Just in case anybody gets offended, that was just me taking the mick out of myself and not you. I have many problems. It amazes me how many problems I have. It's almost like I'm a mutant, only instead of cool superpowers, I just got problems. I'm just using my finger now to get some of those bits, but that's just because I want them to come off. And again, as I've used the words before, very delicate, just getting in there, getting any bits of paint that might come off and block your airbrush or damage your airbrush. And you might not think bits of paint can damage your airbrush, but as mentioned before, they can completely fuck it up. To the point where you have to spend money to replace parts that you don't want to be spending money to replace. I'm just going to do that. Now you might notice I've got two cups. I've got one cup that I'm putting dirty stuff in to rinse, another cup that I'm using clean water for. That's simply because I want to keep any dirty particular bits in that cup, not let them get into the other cups and put back on back on the thing. Doo-doo-doo. Now I'm just going to take this, I'm going to run that through. Just trying to get any paint that might have stayed in there or that might go in there, somehow manage to work its way through and get that out. Now normally I'd just run this under a tap or something, but I'm just doing this just because I want to keep it in front of the camera. That bit is unlikely to have any dough in it, and as you can see, it does not. It does have fingerprints on it because I took my glove off because I'm in Egypt. You don't want any. If you can avoid getting grease in the bits as well, that's useful. It's not the end of the world, but it is useful. Now, this bit will just pop back in here. And that bit will pop back in there. I don't know if you can see, but the square bit on the end of here fits into... I'm just going to take that out again. I'm just going to take it out and I'll actually show you. This has a square bit on the end. And that square bit fits neatly into this bit here when it's inside, and that's what keeps it together. When it's inside, the needle is also going through the middle of here and straight through that bit there, so the needle keeps it together as well. But that's how you assemble it. Other bits, other trigger mechanisms for other things are often more complicated and more delicate. I'm just, oh, wow, that's not tight enough. Let me just screw that, oh, get back out there. Screw that back on. God damn it. That'll teach me. Just tighten that up. Just put that back in there. Where are we? There you go. And that slots in nicely, and again, that should come back and forth easily. That should go up and down easily. If it doesn't, then you've done something wrong. And again, I've got to do it not quite the way I did it. I think when I put it back together, because I've got to put this bit in the cup there, and screw the cup in there, so I know how far to put the needle in. And again, just going to put that there. You can tell the craftsmanship because it actually has a curved cup there, just pointing out with the needle, which helps guide the needle into exactly the right place. And you will need to loosen it off. If you tighten it up, it doesn't work. If you tighten it all the way up, it'll stop the needle going in. Again, don't force it. And you tighten that up, and again, the needle will go back and forth. And that bit goes on the end. This is just to protect the needle so it getting bent. And this bit goes in here. And et voila, I've reassembled it. It can be worthwhile doing what I've done here the first time you disassemble your airbrush, which is record it, because that way you can watch it back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some water first this time because it's easier, and I just messed up last time. I'm going to put some water in there Nowhere near as much because it's a smaller holding cup. And about 50-50 water, 50-50 solution. If it's giving you trouble, you can go 100% and just put it in there. And again, you can see it going in there. Oh, sorry, sometimes it does that. Stop it. When I've got none out, but that's just... Sometimes for some reason, I've never been quite sure, but sometimes it does that when just as I'm running out with thin liquids. It doesn't do it with paint, it just does it with that. But you can see that's just sucked the whole lot all the way through. And that's removed all of it from it. As I say, it's fairly straightforward. Most people can figure it out themselves. But that's how you clean your airbrush. Just in case you're wondering, because I've seen some people actually ask. This is your condensation trap, and you can see on it there's some condensation. That keeps unnecessary condensation from going into your airbrush and watering down your paints unnecessarily. And you can see that from this there's still some pressure left in it. And some people have asked what this little bit down here for. It does this. Oop. You use it to let the air pressure out, and behold, my air pressure is out. Okay. You may notice I turned my air compressor off when I did that, because otherwise it will just fill the air. Nothing bad will happen, it will just fill the air pressure straight back up. Sorry, twitching a bit there, the Tourette's playing up. It is late at night, I have had caffeine. But yeah, that's how to clean your airbrushes. That's just a basic clean. There are some tricks you can do to clean them more thoroughly. For example, I didn't use these, but if any of the holes get jammed up, these can be used to unjam them. They're flexible. If they bend, don't worry. And the same with these. If these bend, don't worry. They're meant to bend. They're meant to be basically like, well, they are pipe cleaners. They're meant to clean the pipes and tubes. It's perfectly okay for them to bend. Sometimes even bend the end myself just to get it round a corner and then straighten up when I'm done. But that is their job. If this bit bends, however, get a new one. You don't want it bent. You want it nice, straight and pointy, because if it's bent, it'll probably damage the things you're trying to clean with it. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you guys find it useful. It's not exactly a complex video, but it's quite nifty. And I could have used it when I first got my airbrushes. Actually, there were some others out there when I first got my airbrushes, but they weren't quite the same. Okay, hope you guys liked it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys find it useful, and goodbye. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.